October 29, 2025. A hospital in Moscow. President Vladimir Putin sits drinking tea with Russian soldiers wounded in Ukraine. The conversation seems routine. Then Putin drops a bombshell that sends shockwaves through Western defense ministries. Yesterday we conducted another test of a prospective system, the unmanned underwater vehicle Poseidon, equipped with a nuclear power unit. For the first time in history, Russia has successfully activated the nuclear reactor on an autonomous underwater drone carrying a thermonuclear warhead, a weapon NATO calls Canyon, a weapon Russian media dubs the Doomsday Torpedo, a weapon that Putin claims cannot be intercepted by any defense system on Earth. 3 days earlier, Russia tested another nuclear-powered weapon, the Burevestnik cruise missile. President Trump called it not appropriate. He's about to be even more unhappy. This is the story of Poseidon and why it changes everything about nuclear deterrence. November 10, 2015. Russian state television channel NTV broadcasts a meeting of defense officials. For a brief moment, maybe 3 seconds, the camera captures a document lying on a table, a document marked secret, a document showing technical drawings of something called Status 6 Oceanic Multipurpose System. The world assumes it's propaganda, computer-generated fantasy, Russian disinformation designed to intimidate the West. Except it wasn't. Status 6 wasn't new. Soviet scientists first proposed nuclear-powered torpedoes in the 1960s. Andrei Sakharov, the physicist who helped develop the Soviet hydrogen bomb, envisioned underwater drones carrying massive warheads. But the technology didn't exist. Nuclear reactors were too large. Miniaturization was impossible. The idea gathered dust for decades. Then, in the 1980s, the Makeyev State Rocket Center and the Rubin Design Bureau, the same institution that designed the legendary Typhoon-class submarine, began working on something extraordinary. By the 1990s, Russian engineers had developed compact nuclear reactors small enough to fit inside a torpedo. Development accelerated in the 2000s. Prototypes underwent hydrodynamic testing. Full-size units were towed behind support ships and loaded into the B-90 Sarov, a special-purpose submarine built specifically for testing new weapons. Photos appeared online in the early 2010s. Defense analysts saw strange torpedo-like objects but didn't know what they were. Few connected the dots. Then came the 2015 leak. Suddenly, the world knew. Russia was building an autonomous, nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed underwater drone. The Pentagon confirmed it in their 2018 Nuclear Posture Review. They called it an intercontinental, nuclear-armed, nuclear-powered, undersea autonomous torpedo. In March 2018, Putin officially unveiled Poseidon during his State of the Nation address. He invited Russians to vote on names for 6 new super-weapons he claimed Russia was developing. Poseidon won. So did Burevestnik, Sarmat, Avangard, Kinjal, and Peresvet. The West dismissed most of them as bluffs, computer graphics, Russian Kremlin propaganda to cover up a crumbling military. After all, Putin's modernization programs had failed before. The Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile, dubbed Satan II, has suffered multiple test failures, including a catastrophic silo explosion in September 2024. But Poseidon was different. Intelligence agencies tracked construction at Severodinsk, the hub of Russian submarine manufacturing. Satellite imagery showed infrastructure expansion along the northern Dwina River and White Sea, new quays, specialized facilities. In January 2019, the Russian Navy announced plans to procure at least 30 Poseidon drones deployed on 4 submarines. This wasn't propaganda. This was real. October 28, 2025. Somewhere in Russian waters, location classified, a massive submarine surfaces. Project 09852 Belgorod. 600 feet long, 30,000 tons, one of the largest submarines ever built. And she carries something no submarine has ever carried before. Inside Belgorod's hull, 6 massive tubes hold 6 Poseidon drones. Each drone is over 60 feet long, nearly 6 feet in diameter, weighs 100 tons, and each carries a miniature nuclear reactor, 100 times smaller than a submarine's reactor, plus a thermonuclear warhead more powerful than Russia's most advanced intercontinental ballistic missiles. On Tuesday, October 28, 2025, one of those drones launched.
The next day, Putin described what happened. For the first time, we managed not only to launch it with a launch engine from a carrier submarine, but also to activate its nuclear power unit, allowing the vehicle to operate for a certain period of time. Previous tests had launched Poseidon using conventional propulsion, diesel engines, battery power. This was different. This time, the nuclear reactor ignited. The drone transitioned to autonomous, nuclear-powered cruise. It operated for an unspecified duration under its own nuclear power. Putin declared it a huge success. He claimed Poseidon's power significantly exceeds that of Russia's Sarmat missile. He said its speed and operating depth are unmatched anywhere in the world. And he stated flatly, "There is no way to intercept it." Western analysts scrambled to assess the claims. No independent verification exists. Russia provided no instrumentation data, no telemetry, no video of the underwater test, just Putin's word, delivered casually while drinking tea with soldiers. But the timing tells a story. 3 days earlier, Russia tested the Burevestnik nuclear-powered cruise missile. That test was confirmed by Norway's intelligence service. The Burevestnik flew 14,000 kilometers over 15 hours, far longer than any previous test. President Trump criticized it publicly. Then came Poseidon. 2 nuclear-powered weapons tested in 1 week, both announced personally by Putin, both described as unstoppable. This wasn't about military necessity. This was nuclear signaling, a message to Washington, a message to Trump, a message that said Moscow will not back down. Understanding Poseidon requires understanding what it is and what it isn't. It is not a traditional torpedo. Torpedoes are short-range weapons fired from submarines or ships to destroy other vessels. They travel a few dozen miles at most. Poseidon can travel thousands of miles. It is not a cruise missile. Cruise missiles fly through the air. Poseidon moves underwater. Poseidon is an autonomous unmanned underwater vehicle, a UUV, a robotic submarine that operates without a crew. Once launched, it navigates independently using onboard guidance systems. It doesn't require constant communication with its mother submarine. It makes decisions. It adjusts course. It operates for days, possibly weeks. The nuclear reactor is the key. Russian engineers claim it's liquid metal-cooled, driving a pump jet propulsion system. The reactor generates unlimited range. Poseidon can theoretically stay underwater indefinitely, limited only by mechanical wear and guidance system reliability. Speed estimates vary wildly. Russian media claims 200 kilometers per hour. NATO analysts estimate closer to 100 kilometers per hour, still significantly faster than any conventional torpedo or submarine. Some reports suggest Poseidon might use supercavitation technology like Russia's VA-111 Shkval torpedo to achieve even higher speeds by creating a gas bubble around the hull, reducing water resistance. But no evidence of supercavitation devices has appeared in available footage. Depth capability is equally impressive. Poseidon can operate at depths exceeding 1,000 meters, over 3,000 feet. That's deeper than most submarines can dive, deeper than most anti-submarine warfare systems can reach, and deep enough to avoid most detection methods. Stealth is built into the design. Poseidon uses a silent running strategy. It travels slowly, maybe 50 to 100 kilometers per hour during its transit phase, minimizing noise. Russian designers estimate detection radius at only 2 to 3 kilometers when operating in stealth mode. Sound waves dissipate into the ocean floor. Acoustic tracking fails. Only when Poseidon approaches its target does it accelerate. In the final 2 to 3 kilometers, speed increases dramatically. By then, it's too late. No existing defense can stop it. And the warhead? That's where it gets terrifying. Russian media initially claimed Poseidon would carry a cobalt-salted bomb, a radiological nightmare weapon that spreads long-lasting contamination. Western analysts now believe that's propaganda. More likely, Poseidon carries a standard thermonuclear warhead in the 2-megaton range. For comparison, the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima was 15 kilotons. Poseidon's warhead is over 100 times more powerful. One Poseidon drone, one warhead, detonated off the coast of a major city, New York, Los Angeles, London, Tokyo. The explosion would obliterate ports and coastal infrastructure. The radioactive fallout would render vast areas uninhabitable for decades. Millions dead, millions more displaced. And there's no defense, no interceptor missile, no anti-torpedo torpedo, no last-minute countermeasure. Once Poseidon launches, it's over. The strategy. Why Russia built a doomsday weapon. Poseidon exists because Russian military planners are terrified of American missile defense. During the Cold War, both superpowers accepted a brutal logic called mutual assured destruction, MAD. If either side launched a nuclear first strike, the other would retaliate with enough surviving weapons to annihilate the attacker. Nobody wins, everybody dies, so nobody launches.
MAD worked because both sides maintained secure second strike capabilities. The Soviet Union had thousands of intercontinental ballistic missiles in hardened silos, mobile launchers on trains and trucks, and ballistic missile submarines lurking in the ocean depths. Even if America launched a surprise first strike and destroyed 90% of Soviet forces, the remaining 10% could still obliterate American cities. Then, in 2002, President George W. Bush withdrew the United States from the 1972 Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. America began building missile defense systems in Alaska, California, Europe, and Asia. The stated goal was defending against rogue states like North Korea and Iran. The real effect? Russia's nuclear deterrent became vulnerable. American missile defense can't stop a massive Russian nuclear strike, but it doesn't have to. It only needs to stop the survivors of an American first strike. Russian strategists fear this scenario. The United States launches a surprise nuclear attack, destroying most of Russia's missiles before they leave the ground. Russia fires back with whatever survives, maybe a few hundred warheads. American missile defenses shoot down most of those. The handful that get through don't inflict enough damage to deter the first strike. MAD collapses. Nuclear war becomes winnable, and Russia loses. Poseidon is Russia's answer. It's a guaranteed retaliation weapon specifically designed to defeat missile defense. You can't shoot down a missile defense interceptor at an underwater torpedo. You can't track it with satellite-based infrared sensors. You can't destroy it in its silo before it launches because it's already at sea, hiding in the ocean depths. Russian military doctrine calls this strategy escalate to de-escalate. If a conventional conflict with NATO goes badly for Russia, Moscow threatens limited nuclear use to force a ceasefire. If NATO calls that bluff and continues fighting, Russia needs weapons that can inflict unacceptable damage even after absorbing a first strike. Poseidon provides that capability. Even if America destroys every Russian missile silo, submarine, and bomber base, Poseidon drones lurking off the U.S. coast can still strike. They can wait for weeks, months. They're autonomous. They don't need orders. They're programmed. And when the time comes, they detonate. This is why Putin emphasizes that Poseidon cannot be intercepted. He's not talking about technical specifications. He's talking about strategy. He's saying, your missile defense is useless. Your first strike fantasies are dead. Mutual assured destruction is back. And we hold the ultimate trump card. The weapon itself may be years from full operational deployment. Western analysts note that moving from a one-time test to reliable patrols is enormously complex. Each Poseidon needs a compact naval reactor, hardened guidance systems, pressure-resistant hull, and a very high-yield warhead, all developed under international sanctions while Russia pours resources into the Ukraine war. But perception matters more than reality in nuclear strategy. The mere existence of Poseidon changes calculations. American planners must now account for underwater drones that can loiter undetected near major cities. NATO navies must develop new anti-submarine warfare tactics for a threat that doesn't behave like traditional submarines. And arms control negotiations become vastly more complicated, because Poseidon sits outside existing treaties. The New START agreement limits intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and heavy bombers. It doesn't cover autonomous nuclear-powered underwater vehicles launched from special mission submarines. That's a verification nightmare. How do you count weapons that can loiter underwater for weeks? How do you verify their warhead yields? How do you ensure they're not deployed in peacetime? Russia has deliberately created a weapon that breaks the arms control framework, and there's nothing the West can do about it. The geopolitical message: Poseidon as nuclear blackmail. Putin didn't announce the Poseidon test during a formal press conference. He didn't schedule a special address to the nation. He casually mentioned it while visiting wounded soldiers, drinking tea, chatting informally. That's strategic communication. Putin wanted the announcement to look spontaneous, natural, not threatening. Just a proud leader sharing good news with his troops. But the timing reveals the real message. October 26th, President Trump canceled a planned Budapest summit with Putin because Moscow refused to accept an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine. Trump had offered negotiations. Putin demanded Ukraine surrender territory. The talks collapsed. October 27th, Trump imposed new sanctions on Russia, the first major sanctions package since returning to the White House. October 28th, Russia tests Poseidon. October 29th, Putin announces it publicly. This is nuclear blackmail. Not crude threats, not ultimatums, just a reminder. Russia has weapons America can't stop. Russia will not cave to pressure. And if Trump wants to escalate with sanctions, military aid to Ukraine, or direct confrontation, Moscow has options. The pattern repeats. Since invading Ukraine in February 2022, Putin has repeatedly brandished nuclear weapons as political leverage. He's threatened to use all means to protect Russian security interests. He's conducted massive nuclear drills. He's moved tactical nuclear weapons to Belarus. He's tested the Sarmat missile when it works. He's now tested both Bereznik and Poseidon within 3 days. Each test sends a message. To Trump, don't push too hard. To NATO, remember what we can do. To Ukraine, you're fighting a nuclear-armed superpower. To China, we're still relevant. Trump responded angrily to the Boroviznik test. He ought to get the war ended. A war that should have taken 1 week is now soon in its 4th year. That's what he ought to do instead of testing missiles. But Putin isn't interested in ending the war on Trump's terms. He's interested in demonstrating strength. And Poseidon does that better than any conventional weapon could. Defense analysts note the propaganda value exceeds the military value, at least for now. Poseidon may not be fully operational. It may never deploy in the numbers Russia claims. But it doesn't matter. The psychological impact is real. Western publics hear doomsday weapon and radioactive tsunami and unstoppable, and they panic. Politicians face pressure to compromise. Negotiations shift in Russia's favor.
That's the point. Poseidon isn't meant to be used. It's meant to intimidate, to create fear, to remind everyone that Russia remains a nuclear superpower capable of destroying the world. And right now, that's working. The reality check. Is Poseidon actually a threat? Western defense experts are skeptical, not about whether Poseidon exists, it clearly does, but about whether it's the invincible doomsday weapon Putin claims. First problem, technical maturity. Moving from a successful one-time test to reliable operational deployment is enormously difficult. Nuclear reactors are complex. Miniaturized nuclear reactors operating in high-pressure underwater environments are even more complex. Autonomous guidance systems that work for weeks without human intervention, even harder. Russia has tested Poseidon several times since 2016, but tests under controlled conditions are different from real-world deployments. Second problem, the carrier submarines. Poseidon requires specially modified submarines to launch. The Belgorod was commissioned in July 2022. The Khabarovsk, the second Poseidon carrier, is still under construction and may not enter service until 2026 or later. That's 2 submarines for up to 12 drones total. Russia claims it will build 30 Poseidons on 4 submarines. But building nuclear-powered special mission submarines while fighting a war and under sanctions? Ambitious. Third problem. Strategic value. Yes, Poseidon can theoretically destroy coastal cities, but Russia already has that capability. Ballistic missiles launched from submarines can hit American cities in 15 minutes. Why wait days or weeks for an underwater drone to arrive? The answer is supposed to be missile defense, but American missile defense is designed to stop rogue state threats, North Korea firing 1 or 2 missiles. It can't stop a Russian nuclear strike involving hundreds of warheads. Poseidon solves a problem that doesn't really exist. Fourth problem, escalation risk. Autonomous nuclear weapons create catastrophic failure modes. What if Poseidon malfunctions? What if its guidance system fails and it attacks the wrong target? What if a third party, China, North Korea, a terrorist group, interferes with its communications? What if it detonates accidentally? There's no human crew to abort the mission, no safeguards, just a robot carrying a multi-megaton nuclear warhead programmed to destroy a city. Fifth problem, the tsunami myth. Russian media loves claiming Poseidon will create a 500-meter-high radioactive tsunami that will wipe Britain into the sea. This is nonsense. Yes, a 2-megaton underwater detonation would create a large wave, but nothing like a natural tsunami. The explosion radiates in all directions, dissipating energy rapidly. Compare it to the 2011 Japan tsunami, triggered by an earthquake releasing energy 163,000 times greater than the largest nuclear weapon ever tested. Poseidon would flood a few coastal blocks. Devastating, yes. Tsunami apocalypse? No. Sixth problem, verification and arms control. Poseidon exists in a legal gray zone. It's not covered by existing treaties, it's difficult to verify, it's provocative, and it makes future arms control agreements nearly impossible. If Russia deploys 30 Poseidons, how does the West respond? Build its own autonomous nuclear torpedoes? Develop new anti-submarine warfare systems? Accept the threat and negotiate limits? There's no good answer. Western strategists aren't panicking. Admirals remind everyone that a test is just a test. Poseidon is years from combat readiness, and even when deployed, it doesn't fundamentally change the strategic balance. Russia already destroys Western cities. Poseidon is just another delivery method. But perception matters, and Putin has successfully convinced much of the world that Russia possesses an unstoppable doomsday weapon. Conclusion: living with the Doomsday Torpedo. October 29, 2025. Vladimir Putin sits in Moscow in a hospital drinking tea and tells the world that Russia has successfully tested a nuclear-powered, autonomous underwater drone carrying a multi-megaton thermonuclear warhead. There's no independent verification, no telemetry data, no video evidence, just Putin's word. But it doesn't matter if the test succeeded exactly as described. It doesn't matter if Poseidon is years from deployment. It doesn't matter if technical challenges remain unsolved. What matters is that Russia has demonstrated intent. They've shown they're willing to build weapons outside the bounds of traditional arms control. They've proven they can miniaturize nuclear reactors small enough to fit inside a torpedo. They've tested autonomous underwater vehicles capable of traveling thousands of kilometers, and they've sent an unmistakable message: do not underestimate Russia's willingness to escalate. The Cold War ended more than 30 years ago. For a generation, nuclear weapons faded from the public consciousness. People stopped worrying about mutual assured destruction. Arms control treaties reduced arsenals. The threat seemed to recede. Poseidon brings it roaring back. This isn't 1962 and the Cuban Missile Crisis, but it's a reminder that nuclear weapons still exist, that nations still develop new delivery systems, that deterrence still requires credible threats, and that the logic of MAD, however horrific, remains the foundation of global security. Putin wants the world to believe Poseidon is invincible, that it changes everything, that Russia holds the ultimate card. The truth is more complicated. Poseidon is real, it's impressive engineering, it's a capable weapon system, but it's not magic, it's not unstoppable, and it's not the decisive advantage Putin claims. What it is, though, is terrifying. An autonomous robot submarine carrying a nuclear warhead programmed to destroy a city, lurking in the ocean depths for weeks or months, waiting for orders that may never come, or that may come at the worst possible moment. That's the world we live in now, where artificial intelligence meets nuclear weapons, where deterrence requires not just missiles in silos, but robots in the ocean, where a technical malfunction or software glitch could trigger Armageddon. The Poseidon test is a milestone, not because it proves Russia's military superiority, not because it makes America vulnerable, but because it marks the beginning of a new era in nuclear strategy. An era where autonomous weapons operate beyond human control, where verification becomes impossible, where arms control collapses under the weight of new technologies, where the risk of accidental nuclear war increases every time we add another layer of automation. Putin calls Poseidon unstoppable. He's wrong. What's really unstoppable is the nuclear arms race. It's back, it's accelerating, and nobody knows how to stop it. Welcome to the second nuclear age. It's going to be just as terrifying as the first.